Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's 12:02, so I think we'll get started. My name is Dr. Ann Gadino, and I teach here at Millersville University in the Education Leadership Program. This is the final in our series for the academic resilience, and we're so pleased to have our guest today. But before he begins, we'd like to turn this over to Dr. Margaret Mabindio, who is the director of our series. Margaret.
Thank you, Ann. Can everybody hear me? Okay, my name is Dr. Margaret Mbindio. I am an academic advisor and an assistant professor in the Department of Academic Advisement and Student Development. I also coordinate advisement in two colleges, the College of Business and the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Studies. Today, we are so pleased to have Dr. David Henriques, who is the chair of the department, actually my department, of Academic Advisement and Student Development. David also is the coordinator for exploratory programming at Millersville University. And he has a lot of experience with student success. And we are so pleased and honored to have him talk to you about overcoming anxiety and gaining confidence over final exams. I know all of you have been very busy studying, and so this is really going to be helpful to you. So without further ado, I would like to welcome David to take over. Thank you. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you, Ann, for that introduction. And thank you to everyone in the audience who, as Margaret mentioned, this is a busy time, so I do appreciate you taking this hour to listen to the presentation. My goals are fairly simple. I hope for you to think some. I hope for you to laugh some. And I hope for you to be a little bit energized by the information that I share with you moving forward. So what I'm going to do, it is a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to start the PowerPoint. I do have the chat box open. One of the things to know about me, I do like and prefer questions from the audience. While I have a presentation, I do prefer to modify, adjust per the audience needs. So do not hesitate to pose a question, concern. And again, some of the things that I will be doing is I will be asking for participation. I don't think anyone, and I've always told my students, the more interactive a presentation is, the better it is. And I don't believe everybody wants to hear me talk for almost an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. So bear with me here. Okay. As the title says, overcoming anxiety and gaining confidence over final exams. So there are a number of things that I'm going to talk about today. And part of my goal, as Ann had mentioned, this is the final presentation for the fall semester. So one of the nice things is I've had the opportunity to sit in on almost all of the presentations this year. So I'm going to do a somewhat of a summary on that and tie that into what we're talking about today. I'm going to share some personal background. I always find that that helps reinforce some of the information that we're talking about. And then some of the topics that I'm going to talk about, and this is more the cognitive side, the thinking side, listening to our inner voices. How does locus of control impact? And then finally, steps for gaining confidence. Okay. So next, the personal background. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The summary for the semester. So number one, values equal expectations. The question that Dr. Primus asked us in the very first presentation, do you have the desire to learn? Are you willing to put the time and the effort into it? Do you value education and value your own education? because if you value your education, the expectations follow. Number two, you must plan to achieve your goals. That one statement came from Dr. Charlie Nutt. So goals don't just happen by happenstance. You have to plan them out in small pieces. My recommendation, and I have this later on in a slide, but I will share this now. If you have goal statements, are they written down? Are they posted anywhere? Have you shared them with anybody? It's very good and very easy for us to set goals in our heads, but then never follow through. Learning requires active participation. So that was from Dr. Finley Bowman. Learning takes effort. And if you're without that effort, learning is difficult. Number four and five, these two are more my personal ones. Each of us is capable of achieving great things. Now, yes, I am an optimist, but I also do believe that if you want something bad enough and you are willing to put the time and the effort into it, you can achieve those goals. So when I do new student orientation, I always tell my students, every student is capable of getting a 4.0. The question you have to ask yourself, are you willing to put the time and the effort to meet that standard? And that one, of course, is going to be tied into what we talk about with final exams. The other thing that I always tell my students is if you struggle with pretty much anything, success doesn't require huge changes. For, again, a lot of my students, small tweaks in how we handle studying and how we read our textbooks and how we take notes really brings about huge change. Now, the issue is, are you willing to make those changes? So that of course is very important. Okay. Now moving on to the personal piece. And this will probably be the piece that makes everybody laugh. So what I have up here on the screen, that is me. That is me when I was an undergraduate at Millersville University, when I had a lot of hair. My mustache is a little bit fuller now, obviously more gray. I have some more miles on myself. But the reason I share this picture, so when I was an undergraduate, if you would have ever told me that I would become a university, let alone a Millersville University faculty member, I would have thought, no way. Those people are way too smart. I'm an okay student, but I don't know if I could ever do that. And if you remember back to the thing that I shared before in the previous slide, if you want to achieve great things, it can happen. And I'm a perfect example. Again, 30 plus years ago, that was never anything on my horizon. But each one of you has that capability to meet the goals that you want. I have tried to figure out what year this picture was taken, and I cannot remember. And I don't know why I was wearing a tuxedo. I want to say it's a graduation picture because I believe I was also wearing shorts in that picture. So again, just to give you a certain perspective, I will share, again, regarding my undergraduate experience. I was a psychology major. So I have both my undergraduate master's in psychology and a master's degree in clinical psychology, both from Millersville University. So that will help you understand some of where I'm coming from as well, and have learned over the 30 years of working with college students. Okay. All right. So the next point that I want to talk about is our locus of control. So some of you may be familiar with this concept. Some people, and maybe you've heard introvert, extrovert. Some people think of it in those terms. But the reason that I like to talk about locus of control, and particularly the power of our inner voice, as you can see from the pictures, if our locus of control and our inner voice is toxic, we really, really struggle with success. So a practical example, when I was an undergraduate, my area of interest is sports psychology. So I was working with the #1 player on the golf team, and he was really, really good. However, he struggled with his tee shots. And the problem he was having with his tee shots is when he was standing in that tee box, he would hear his father's voice telling him that he was not good enough. So I bring this up because we all have inner voices. Some of us, we don't pay attention to them. For others, that inner voice can be really, really loud. And to tie this into education, think of it in terms of what you say when you sit down to take a test. What things go through your mind? Do you question your intelligence? Do you question that this class is too hard? So I'm going to pause here for a second because this is what I'm going to ask everybody to do. So, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to the internal and the external locus of control. So with the internal part, you are in control. You see yourself as driving the car, so to speak. The external is you think everything happens outside of your control. So again, you can see how when you're in control, that puts you in a stronger position than believing that everybody else manipulates what happens. But with the inner voices, so what I'm going to ask you to do is just take out a scrap piece of paper. It doesn't have to be anything formal, but this is going to be a group exercise here. And what I will do, and let me see if I can figure this out. I'm going to ask if anybody is interested in putting their comments up on or in the chat box, and perhaps we can talk about some of them. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do. On your sheet of paper, let's see, what do I have? I have 8 items. So you can put down 7 or 8 numbers. And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Now, some of you may have just said something inside your head. Oh God, here we go. Why am I closing my eyes? That's an example of your inner voice. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to share these 7 or 8 things, and I want you to write down the first thing that comes into your mind. Okay? So we're going to start off easy. Chocolate chip cookies. The second one is the word mom. Number 3 is snow. Number 4, calculus. Number 5, this one's 2 words, online learning. The next one is COVID. And the final one, I will not ask you to put these comments on the chat board. The final one is Donald Trump. So again, what my goal is here is for us to recognize that when people say, do things, when we are in certain circumstances or certain situations, we each respond differently. So, for example, prior to this presentation, I could feel my anxiety. Now, I've done hundreds of presentations like this. Do I still get nervous? Sure. But I've learned over my experience, and my self-talk is always, I've done this before and I will do well this time. So again, let's just go through some of these. So chocolate chip cookies. For some of you, ugh, yuck, I hate chocolate chip cookies. For others, it may have been, wow, I love chocolate chip cookies. For mom, I would hope everyone has a positive thought about their mother. The next one, snow. Again, creates a very wide variety of responses. I know people who hate driving in snow, who don't like the cold. Then there are probably some of us in the audience who, oh my gosh, I am so looking forward to going skiing. I bought new skis, so this will be perfect. Again, personal perspective. I know yesterday and a little bit today, there was some snow flurries. I'm like a little kid when it snows for the first time. I'm standing at the window looking outside. So again, that's my response. How about calculus? Did anybody say, woo, I can't wait to take calculus? Bring it on. The more math, the better. While I'm sure there were some who said, math, do I really have to take math classes to graduate from college? Okay. And I do find that math and science, particularly for college students, tend to be significant barriers to success because of past experience. But again, remember going back to something that I said before, learning takes effort and you are all capable of succeeding. How about online learning? So again, another personal example. I have 3 children. My oldest daughter hates online learning. She would much rather be in a classroom. My youngest son loves online learning. So again, it's not a question of right or wrong. It's how do we approach these situations? Okay, my son is an independent learner and is fairly introverted, so he likes being by himself. My daughter is the opposite. Extroverted, much more social, prefers having the interaction and the dialogue with her classmates and the teacher. Again, neither one is wrong, but for my daughter, the adjustment this semester was more difficult because that was not her preferred learning. Again, COVID, we know lots of students are dealing with the anxiety associated with COVID. Again, there are probably some of you who said, COVID, no big deal. Again, no right or wrong answer. I just wanted you to take a moment to start thinking about how that inner voice helps you or hurts you. Because what's going to happen, and again, tying this into your final exams or any tests or presentations or papers, how you start the process is often going to influence whether or not you succeed or whether or not you put in that much effort. As a side note, one of the things that I know from my 30 years of experience teaching this stuff, most students study what they like first and spend the most time on what they like. And then the classes that they do not like, or the subjects that inner voice is, oh, well, you're just not good in math, tend to be the last subject studied. Now, just like going to the gym and working out, if you leave the things you like least to the end, they're going to get dropped by the wayside. So my suggestion to you, and this is an added bonus to this presentation, flip it around. Do the class that you like least first. and notice how much more time and how much more information you are able to glean from your study. Again, one of these very small changes that I mentioned earlier, not a huge change, just a simple change in how you approach your studying. Okay, so again, I wanted everyone to recognize that we all have these inner voices, and they can be both good and bad. Well, I shouldn't say good and bad. I should say toxic or beneficial, as I have here. So just moving on. Okay. So again, in terms of how we see the world, how we think, what our inner voice says, another way of looking at this sort of paradigm or this continuum is how you see the world. And oftentimes it is set on the continuum victim or creator mindset. So the victim is the more external perspective. You have the more toxic internal voice. So, you know, if you, let's just go through these. If I fail this paper, it is because I'm not a good writer. The victim says, this class is so boring. I really have no need for learning this. That one I hear quite often from students. Why do I have to take, and I'll just use this as an example, a history class? I'm never going to use history. Again, that is a victim mentality. My Wi-Fi crashed, so I can't do any schoolwork today. That's my oldest son's favorite comment. Victims accept fate. They're passive. You know, again, going back to Dr. Finley Bowman's comment, learning requires action. So you can see that victims are often unsuccessful because they are very passive. And this is where the next one gets, you know, a little bit more personal for some of us. They feel inferior to other people. Okay. So one of the things that was talked about when Facebook, and I know I'm dating myself, but when Facebook first came out, is that they were noticing that people were getting depressed when they viewed Facebook because they were able to see what other people were posting. And they were like, oh man, look at where they're going for vacation and look how happy they are, and so forth and so on. When you seek validation from other people, many times, again, if you see yourself as a victim, you're going to internalize those into negative thoughts. Okay, so those are the victims. Okay, now ideally, we're all going to move over to the side of creators. So when you see a problem such as writing a paper where you're concerned about your ability to succeed, the victim says, well, I'm just not a good writer. Yeah, I'll wait till the last minute and just put something together. The creator says, wow, I got a paper. Writing is not my strength. I better go to the writing center and ask for help to see if they can improve my writing so that I get a better grade. The second one, a creator might say, well, I know this isn't my favorite class, but I'm a curious person. I like to learn new things. And I will try and weave this into my overall knowledge. And again, the comment that I often make to students, while it may not be relevant to you today, you never know if and when it will be relevant later on in your life. Regarding your Wi-Fi crashing, okay, you can't connect, whatever the issue is, find another location that has Wi-Fi. Find a solution. Find a way to overcome and work it to your advantage. And again, you can see there the next one. The creators are problem solvers. Yeah, this didn't work. Let's try another way. I like to share at this point, there was a study a number of years ago comparing Chinese students and American students, and I believe they were 8-year-olds. And what the study shared, the two groups, the Chinese students and the American students, were both given a math problem, and it was an unsolvable math problem. The American students gave up after about 20 minutes. The Chinese students, after 2 hours, had to be told by the researchers that there was no answer to the question. So the Chinese students were trying to find the solution. They kept working at it, and they kept working at it, and they kept working at it. Whereas the American students gave up. And again, I see that with some of our college students who just say, oh, I've tried. I put in an extra half an hour of studying and it still doesn't make sense. And then they just give up. Please don't do that. And the other thing I will share is we've not always been like that. So again, I'm going to have you think back to when you were younger. I'm going to presume everybody on this broadcast learned to ride a bike. And collectively, what happens when you first learn to ride a bike? You fall, maybe scratch your knees, scratch your elbow, you may draw blood. But what do? We get back up on that bike, don't we? Because nothing was going to stand in our way of learning how to ride a bike. At some point, we lose that mindset. We take defeat, or when we encounter barriers, we stop. Again, one of the things that I would hope would energize you moving forward is that when you see yourself either saying that internally, feeling that way, that you recognize that has the potential of adversely impacting your success. And I'm not just talking on final exams. I'm not just talking about college in general. Could be work related. Oh, the boss doesn't like me. Okay, well, what are your solutions? What are the other ways that you can make the boss like you? Okay, perhaps it's finding out why the boss doesn't like you. But again, at least trying to investigate. Also, the final two on here, the creators take steps to improve themselves. So one of the great things we offer here at the university is a leadership program. And it's through the SMAC and Student Affairs, and it's offered every semester. It's a series of trainings to improve your leadership skills. Great program. I challenge each of you when the next announcement comes out to get involved. Give it a try. Risk something and change for the positive. Okay? And then the final piece on there, the creators seek out others to help them. So find the individuals. That could be here at the university, could be one of our success coaches. It could be your academic advisor. It could be a tutor. It could be your professor. It could be your peer mentor. There are lots and lots and lots of people here at the university who can help you. Seek out those people. And even if you do not know who to go to, at the end of this presentation, I have my email address. Please, 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 always feel free to reach out to somebody, i.e. me, and I will gladly direct you to the individual or the office with that information. So please don't ever say, I don't know who to turn to. You now know who to turn to. Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. Okay, now I just threw this in this morning because it was something that was on my mind. And again, as I think of canvassing, particularly my first year students, and how we compare ourselves to others. This iceberg illusion is a great representation of how we often see individuals that we see as successes. What we see is, wow, that was really easy. How did they do that? It comes so easy to them. But what we don't see is what is underneath the waterline, the work that the students had to do to get to that point, the failures that they encountered along the way, the time and the sacrifice and the discipline. So I'm always amazed when I watch somebody who's, a teenager in college, who's a virtuoso musician, and I just, wow, the number of hours that they have to put into practice. For our student athletes, if you want to be good and continue getting better, you have to spend at least 2 hours, several days a week, lifting and doing your exercises. We often presume that it's just natural ability, but they still have to work. So remember, those people that we see as successes all had to deal with those issues under the water. Okay. And I just Googled this morning the iceberg illusion. So again, I think this is a great one. I've handed it out in my freshman seminar classes. Again, I think it's a great reminder and a great visual about how we see the world and how we can change how we see the world. Okay. So again, we're moving toward how all of this ties into our final exams. Okay. Steps for gaining confidence. And I did change the wording on my notes here. It's not only just controlling your inner voice, but it's learning to listen to your inner voice. Because sometimes your inner voice can be giving you some good advice. Don't go on that ice because it may fall through. That's your inner voice. Okay, that might be sound information to consider. So again, the more important part is to recognize that voice is there. Number 2, confidence is a skill. We are not born with confidence. Not everybody develops confidence, but you can change to become more confident. Okay. And again, some of the little things, participate in those leadership programs, tying into number 4, identify your cheerleaders. Who are the people who go, you're great? Those are the people that you want to surround yourself, and stay away from those naysayers, the negative people, the people who bring you down, or quite frankly, are just not nice. Focus on solutions, not the problems. How can you fix the situation? What do you need to do? Number 5, one of my favorites, and most of you have probably heard this, smile more. It actually takes less muscles to smile than it does to frown. So when you smile, it radiates that positivity. People are more likely to speak to you. People are more likely to engage with you. More positive people will seek you out. So again, that's something to consider. Look forward, not back. At this point, even though the Avengers were able to go back in time, we do not have any mechanisms for changing the past. Think about what you can do moving forward. Another great example, again, I mentioned earlier, math and science, and how most of my students, when I say a math class, I can read in their body language. They're just, oh. Don't let your past academic experiences shadow the future. And again, I know that that is sometimes easier said than done. But what I find is a lot of students will actually take me up on that, put the time and effort into the math class or the science class, and then they come back and they're like, wow, I really enjoy that stuff now, and I'm doing pretty good. Again, just little changes can bring about huge change. Number 7, plan and set goals. One of the assignments that I had my advisees do this semester is write down their academic goals. And not only write them down, but post them somewhere in their room. The reason that I did that is so that there is a constant reminder of that personal contract that you've made with yourself. And what I tell my students, every decision you make needs to be reflected in that decision. Okay. If you have a paper due, but PlayStation 5 just came out, what's your priority? Does learning how to play the new PlayStation 5 game, is that more important than putting time into your academics? And while most of you are going to say, well, of course not, some of you will prefer doing that PlayStation. Many years ago, I had a student, and this is probably 20, 25 years ago, who spent 60 hours a week, and this is his own data, 60 hours a week watching television and studying 3 hours a week. And he could not understand why he was not doing well in school. Now, yes, that is an extreme example. And I really hope that no one in here is watching that much television or Hulu or Amazon Prime or whatever it is. But please compare where your time goes. Are you spending 2 to 3 hours a day on your academics? Are your academics your priority? Do you put the time and effort into achieving your goals? Number 8, change like learning or learning how to learn takes time and effort. So again, I like to share a personal example. My first college semester here at Millersville, I earned 1 B, 3 C's, and a D. It took me almost a year to figure out that what I had done in high school was not going to work in college. And I started making changes. And really, one of the things that really helped me, my freshman roommate was friends with 2 juniors. And those 2 juniors were able to say, oh, no, you don't want to do it that way. You want to do it this way. So they were able to teach me how to make some changes. And my grades then followed suit. And the thing that I always tell my students as well, college success is not an IQ test. College success is a work ethics test. Are you willing to put the time and effort, and we'll just use the words here now, are you willing to put the time and effort into studying for your final exams? Number 9, and this is a huge one, and I do find that this one's a bigger issue for my male students than my female students. Ask for help. Ask a question. I'm always amazed when I'm in situations where students are saying, yeah, I don't understand this, but I don't know what to do. And then I'm in a group of faculty and they're saying, well, I don't know why the students won't come talk to me. So the students have questions, the faculty want to help, and nobody's talking to each other. Please ask your faculty members questions. They want to know what you know and what you don't know. And if everybody just is silent when the faculty member says, are there any questions? She or he presumes that everybody understands and then is going to move on. So please, understand that asking questions is appropriate. And number 10, and this one's a little bit of a challenge, but it's an important consideration here. Become an expert. So, and I'm going to tie this for those of you who are in COM 100 this semester or will be taking it next semester. What I find is the primary reason that students do not like public speaking is fear. It's fear that they are going to be made fun of or stutter or lose their place. But the best way to overcome that situation is to talk about something that you have a knowledge base, that you have a background in. So for example, I've had a number of student athletes, a number of football players, and when they've had to give speeches, let's say a how-to speech, one of my students was a quarterback or is a quarterback. And I said, it would be really cool if you did a presentation on how to throw a spiral. And he's like, I know how to do that. And his presentation was really good because it was something that he had some background knowledge on. Now, if I asked him to talk about the 3 chambers of government, I don't know if he would have been as enthused and his presentation would have been as strong. So again, find the things that you're either already an expert in or become that expert. Become the person who is well read on that area. Okay, and I have a little bit more about this in a slide coming up. So all of these strategies, and again, these are not overnight steps. For some of us, it will take some time, but that the change can happen. All right. So connecting all of these things, our inner voice, our locus of control, our gaining confidence. Okay. So some things to think about. Now, granted, when I started working on this, obviously we were further out, but there are still lots of these pieces that can help you. I hope each of you know when your final exam is scheduled. Okay, now I have location on here. Of course, if this was a face-to-face semester, you would be taking your final exams across campus. Now, many of you are saying, well, yeah, I know when my final exams are. It never fails that 1 or 2 students will come to me, send me an email and say, oh, I missed my final exam. I had it on the wrong day. Double check that you have that information. Test design. What type of test are you going to be given? Is it multiple choice? Is it an essay test? Is it cumulative? Is it just on the last 4 chapters in the semester? Most faculty will gladly give you that information. And the reason why it's a good question to ask, each of those different test designs on some level require a certain type of studying. So you may need to modify how you study. Test weight. So if your final exam is 75% of your final grade versus 20% of your final grade, I'm really hoping that you recognize that you need to put a lot of time and effort into that final exam. Don't treat all your tests the same. So when they carry more weight, that means they have more impact on your grade. Okay, so that's 3 weeks out. Again, this is something that can be done this week. 2 weeks out, make sure you have all of the information for the final. Now, granted, there may be some new information that's going to be taught, but You want to make sure you have all of that information, ideally, and leading into the next one, in an organized fashion, easy to find, legible. And I've read and seen some of your notebooks. So you want to make this as easy a process for you. And then the final one, if you haven't already done this, create a study group. Now, one of the challenges that I've heard from students with online learning is that they're doing a lot of solo studying. I have been encouraging my students, find somebody else in your class. See if you can do Zoom study sessions or whatever your platform is you prefer. Because that helps when, well, number one, it's just an active learning strategy when you're physically studying with somebody else. It gives you the opportunity to question, quiz, inquire, ask for clarification, things along those lines. 1 week out. For most of you, you're going to be taking your final exams on your desk, either in your room, at the dinner table, down in the basement in your quote unquote classroom. What does that space look like? Are there distractions? Is it noisy? Let's say your final is at the dining room table. Does everybody know that that needs to be quiet time for you? You really want to get that stuff taken care of now. If you are on your desk in your bedroom, what's on your desk? Is it cluttered? Is it organized? What do you have? Pencils and papers and things readily available to help you? And that, again, setting up your testing location. The fewer distractions you have, the better and more efficient you can be. And this one's probably going to be the kicker for most of you. Put your phone away. Don't leave it on the desk or the table while you're taking your exams. Turn it off and put it away. Same with the notifications on your computer, that your pop-ups, whether it's your Twitter feed or what have you, you want to make sure that you are in the testing zone during the time of your final exams. Because and I won't bore you with the research, but it is well researched that if you are concentrating on something and then get interrupted, it takes at least 5 to 10 minutes for you to get back to the same level of concentration that you had before. So again, minimizing those distractions are very, very, very important. Oh, and feel free, if you're in your bedroom and your brother and sister are home and mom or dad are home, put up a sign, do not disturb, okay? This is an important time for you. Now, 24 hours, okay, the day before. And please, everybody, do not cram. Do not pull an all-nighter. Again, the research is very clear. Pulling all-nighters is not a successful strategy. To give you a comparison, if those of you who work, if I asked you to pull an all-nighter at work and then be prepared to go in the next day, maybe after an hour of sleep, I suspect that your performance on that job the next day would not be very good. So please do not stay up at all night. In fact, my recommendation would be during finals week, make sure your bedtime is 10 or 11 o'clock. Give yourself a good night's sleep. Because again, the more rested you are, the more likely you will be successful in your exams. Please eat appropriately. You know, I'm not saying eat a huge meal, but make sure you're not sitting there during the test and your stomach's growling because you're hungry. Eat something, ideally brain food, to help you through that test. Some students may take snacks or have snacks with them. And related, make sure you've gone to the bathroom before you get started. Again, we want to eliminate and reduce any distractions. One of the nice things too that we have as part of our schedule, so next Monday is reading day. So that is a day where there are no final exams. That's where I would like you to make sure week 3 is done, week 2 is done, week 1 is done, and your 24-hour tasks are done. Okay? And then finally, breathe, breathe, and breathe. Again, going back earlier, we talked about our inner voices, and when we get a test, what do we say to ourselves? Do we get all worked up? So before I go on to this breathe example, I want you to think back to a time where you took a test and for the life of you, you could not remember one answer. You knew it, but you just couldn't remember that answer. So you turn in the test, you walk outside the classroom, and what happens? The answer pops into your head. That is what anxiety can do to us in test-taking situations. Breathing is a great strategy for alleviating anxiety. Plus, since our brain works on oxygen, breathing definitely helps the brain be more efficient. Now, don't hyperventilate, but again, doing some deep breathing. So if you get to a question and you're not sure what the answer is, don't panic. Move on to the next question. And if it creates some anxiety, take a moment, close your eyes, breathe. I always tell students to do some positive self-talk. I did all my studying. I know I remember reading this. In a few minutes, it will come back to me, things along those lines. Okay, so those are all things that you can do. This one's the $1 million suggestion for you. As it says, David's #1 strategy. And it's related to forming the study group. The best way to learn something is to teach it, to get yourself at the level that you know it well enough that you can teach it. So what I mean by that is, if you don't have a study group, get your younger brothers and sisters or your older brothers and sisters, get your parents and say, this is what I need to know for the final exam. I want to teach it to you. Because the truth of the matter is, if you can't teach it, you don't know it. And that's the nice part with the study groups. I encourage students, everybody take a topic and teach it to the other members of the study group. Again, if you can teach it, I am confident that you understand it and will do well. So again, just here, you never really learn something until you teach it. And then how it involves active learning. So ideally, you are being involved actively, obviously, with the learning process. And you can see that chart. If we only read the material, that's 10%. If we only hear the information, we only retain 20%. But if we are able to teach others, we retain over 90% of our information. That, ladies and gentlemen, right there, that is the best strategy for overcoming anxiety and gaining confidence. Become the expert. Make sure you know the information well enough that you could teach it. And then finally, in conclusion, success is a choice. It doesn't just happen. You have to be physically involved in, taking your final exams and kicking butt. Okay, that is up to you. And I did put He-Man in there. For those of you who do not know He-Man, he was a cartoon character, or is a cartoon character that I grew up with. And his comment or his catchphrase was, "I have the power." So if you ever look up any He-Man cartoons, and there have been movies and so forth, that's what I want you to take away from this. You do have the power to accomplish whatever you set your mind to with appropriate time and effort. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, those are my email addresses. I don't necessarily expect you to remember my name, but that's why I included the advisor email. That one's obviously a fairly easy word to remember. And again, I am more than glad to answer any of your questions related to this presentation, or how I can help direct you to appropriate offices on campus.
Thank you so much, David. We have just 2 minutes left, and I'd like to open up the chat. If anyone has any questions they would like to ask of Dr. Henriques, this would be a great time to do it. And please put them in the chat. We'll give everybody a couple minutes just to think and perhaps pose a question or two.
And please, as Ann was sharing, if it is of a more personal nature, because sometimes these issues are, feel free to use the advisor@Millersville email account, because I don't want anyone to not feel comfortable asking for help. So Ann, I suspect that means everyone's going to ace their final exams now.
Let's hope so. That would be a great outcome from this session. Thank you so much, Dr. Henriques, for this wonderful information and guiding us into final exam season so that our next 2 weeks really can be as productive as possible. And this is the final in our series of the Academic Resilience series. Some of you have tuned in with us for every session, and for some of you, this might be your first session, but we're really glad that you have been with us, whether it's once or for every time. This could not have happened without the incredible effort of Dr. Margaret Mabindio, who spearheaded all of this. She put together the series, the speakers, all of the flyers, all of the announcements, everything that you have seen. So Dr. Mabindio, thank you so much for this gift that you've given to our university community so that we could all be more academically resilient. And I'll turn it over to Margaret for her final words.
Again, it's an honor. It's just what we do as faculty, as staff, and it has been an honor, doing this. I thank everyone that has stood with us, our department, all the students. As I look at the names, some of the names have been here every single time. And I really do appreciate taking the time, and I'm sure you have learned a lot from every speaker that has spoken to us. We hope to continue next semester. We are not sure how that will look, but we'll let you know. Thank you so much to the students. We wish you a wonderful exam time. We hope that you do well. Again, you have been given ideas on what to do, in preparation. Please do exactly that, and you are going to do well. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you again. Bye-bye.